Welcome back, guys. Welcome to another video. We have a lot to discuss today. Portfolio sitting at just over $32,000, pushing all-time highs. We're going to talk about news this week, a SaaS pullback. We're going to talk about NVIDIA earnings a little. We're going to talk about how to find stocks that could 10x, and I'm going to talk about some stocks I'd be interested in buying in the coming weeks and months. So, without further ado, let's get into the video. So, first of all, the portfolio was relatively flat compared to last week. I believe last week it was at like 32,200 or something. So we're up like ever so slightly. AMD was a bit lower this week, I believe. Same with Nebius. But Celsius and ELF both moving to the upside, both up around 10-ish% this week. Celsius making a nice move up. I've been loading up on the stock. Second biggest position in the portfolio. And ELF I was loading up a while ago, but it has obviously started making a huge move up over 100% from the lows. I'm up 55% on it. So hopefully you guys listened to me and bought some of those stocks. But yeah, portfolio is looking in a pretty decent position. SoFi, of course, I would like to add more here eventually, and currently I did move to Chicago for college, so I'm in the process of getting a job. I have some interviews lined up, so probably within the next month I'll have a job again, so I'll be able to continue putting money into the market, which is something that everyone should be doing. Obviously, most of you guys are going to have a job already. A lot of people are older. I'm only 18, but a lot of people watching this are probably, what, 20, 30, 40? But with the amount you should invest every week or month, it should be a set amount that's going to remain consistent, that you can always put in. And ideally, if you could do it once a week, that would be the best. But if you can't, every other week or at least once a month, because that way you're always putting money into the market. You're never going to get left behind, because we don't want to time anything here, because it is impossible. So, some news this week for my stocks. We had the biggest one is Nebius dilution. They had a 5 billion convertible notes offering, and it is dilution, but it is expected if you're in Nebius specifically as well. They need to build out for the infrastructure, and as we know from their earnings and their conference calls, their infrastructure is completely sold out. Their 2027 infrastructure is completely sold out pretty much. They're having auctions where things are going 15% higher than, like, so basically it's well necessary, in my opinion, because if you have something, a product like Nebius has, that's completely selling out, demand is increasing, capex is increasing, you're going to want to continue building out. And even if capex does decrease in the future from all these big companies, Nebius is still probably going to sell out their whole thing, because there's just so much demand. Even if the demand slows down a little, Nebius is still going to have an amazing time. Another thing to keep in mind about this dilution is it doesn't affect the stock price, or it won't take into effect until the stock is higher. I think it's around 40% is higher from where it is on market close on Friday. So it's another thing. It's not dilution now. It's dilution in the future that happens after the stock has run up 40%. So everything's fine with that. Other than that, not a whole lot happened. Bank of America upgraded their price target on ServiceNow, and Piper Sandler put an outperform rating and $22 price target. Well, so might be a little low, but interesting stuff. Before we get into a potential SaaS pullback, I do want to mention that NVIDIA is reporting their earnings next quarter. If they come in with a nice beat, it could drive everything up. More specifically, AMD, potentially like a Nebius as well, but mainly AMD. That's the biggest position of portfolio, most important. So NVIDIA earnings could push this up a little higher. What am I expecting? Listen, I think it's just going to move the stock nowhere. So I don't think AMD or NVIDIA is going to move, but hey, they could prove me wrong. But the big thing to keep in mind with this is that NVIDIA needs to really report a blowaway quarter, because everyone's expecting a beat and raise. So they really need a beat and raise. So it's just going to be a little bit hard, but if it happens, I think NVIDIA runs, and if NVIDIA runs, I think AMD will follow. So yeah, we also have a potential SaaS pullback. So Over the past couple months, SaaS stocks, but more specifically cybersecurity, has run up hard. So you look at stocks like Rubrik, it's up over 100%. Palo Alto Networks from the lows, it's up what, over 150-ish%. Same with CrowdStrike. Like these companies have really moved in the past like 3, 4, 5 months. So something to take into consideration is I don't own Palo Alto Networks or CrowdStrike, but I own Rubrik. But for Rubrik specifically, I'm talking about here, it's run up such a large amount based on no real guidance, no real earnings, and no real catalyst, I want to say. Before, it was obviously undervalued when I was buying. I'm up over 75% on the position. It's less than a year old, but before it was obviously undervalued, and my case on Rubrik still stands. I think that as AI develops, more and more company spend is going to be on cybersecurity because AI is going to make it easier for cyber attacks to happen all the time, which means companies are going to have to spend more and more money on cybersecurity products like Rubrik. So that still stands. However, they're reporting earnings coming up. And especially in my position here, where I don't have a ton of cash on hand, I might be looking at taking a bit of profits on the thing, on the stock, on the position. Because if I still had a steady source of income coming in, I'd look at the position. It's what, like, let's do some math here. What, like 10, 8%, 6, it's like 6% of the portfolio, I think. If I look at that normally, portfolio isn't too massive. It's like, if it drops on earnings, we might buy a little. We'll probably leave it alone. But since I'm in a situation with little cash on hand, I might sell off a little bit of my position before earnings to just have that cash. And if it does go down, we'll just buy back in. It goes up, oh well, we just took some profit. So that's my thinking on Rubrik. I think it applies to all cybersecurity stocks because I think a pullback is almost not necessary, but it looks like it's due for a little pullback here because a lot of this is just on a lot of like hype and excitement about it, which I think is warranted for the long-term outlook. But in the short term, there hasn't been many catalysts for many of these companies specifically or earnings that really show the impact of all of this. That's all in the future. So I think some of these stocks, specifically cybersecurity, have kind of run a little above where they probably should be. Also, AI and chip stocks, AMD, I think they're going to start running really once we get into September, October. So they're going to run through fall, in my opinion, up until the end of the year. But until then, I think they're just going to kind of stay dead, just kind of stuck in a little range. But when that happens, it's another thing to take into consideration. You look back when they were running a couple months ago, all the SaaS names were in a really bad time. So it makes you think, when they do start running AMD and chip stocks, is that going to force the SaaS stocks back into a bad time? My personal opinion on this is that I don't think it will happen because I think a lot of the SaaS fears came from fear of AI replacing the companies. But I think a lot of that has gone away. So maybe they won't run as hard as they have now, but I do think they're going to at least remain flat, if not increase slowly. The stocks that I do think are going to go down are going to be the big spenders, all the capex, Meta, Amazon, Google, all of these companies that are spending tons of money on capex. I think money is going to rotate out of those stocks and rotate into the chip stocks in the coming month or two. So that's my look on the market. And also another thing to keep in mind is if money is coming out of the Mag 7, it's the biggest stocks in the market, it might be a little issue for the actual market itself. If you're not an individual stock picker, if you just have some index funds, that's something to consider as well. And I do think that AMD has one last major run coming. I think it's going to run to 1,000 to 1,500. and I think this is going to be the last push. I think that happens within the next 2 or 3 years, but it obviously could front run all of that within the next year or two. Who knows? But up 400% on the stock. I still have the highest conviction in it, and I will continue holding. Just the one thing, Rubrik. If I do decide I want to trim that position, I will make a short and a video about it, discussing it further, but without, yeah, other than that, that's what I think of the market. So, how to find stocks that have 5x, 8x, 10x opportunities. So, this is just a list that I've compiled of things that you want to look into for stocks. And this isn't for every stock you should have in your portfolio, because you don't want to have a portfolio with all high growth, high risk. You want to have some safer stocks, some steady growers that are going to do well regardless of what happens in the market. So, this is specifically, you want to find that next AMD, that Nebius if you got in a bit earlier, stocks like that. So top line revenue growth acceleration is very important. And this is also something else. You want to keep in mind, is the company positioned to take market share? That is the case with AMD. It was positioned back when the stock was $96 when I was buying to take market share from Intel and Nvidia. Otherwise, if this isn't the case, the company needs to be in an industry that has huge potential growth tailwinds to come. So these two are a requirement. One of the two needs to happen. Another thing you want to keep in mind, strong management and insider alignment. Management is basically going to decide where the company goes. Basically, they're either going to screw it up or they're going to perform really well. So having a good management team and a good CEO is one of the most important aspects. Some sort of groundbreaking product or a really good moat is always nice to have, but it doesn't necessarily have to happen. But basically, if the company does have this, it's a really good sign. If they don't have this, but they still have like a misunderstood business model or something along those lines, it's still a fine investment. Something important to keep in mind is that valuation can be high on these companies, and most of the time it will. If you look at just an example, Tesla or Palantir. If you look at them back in the day when before they had their huge growth cycle, the valuation was really high, but it was justified in the long term because their revenue growth kept on going, which brought their PE down eventually. So if the stock has a high valuation, don't be scared off by it. Just as long as they have the potential to continue growing a ton and outgrow that valuation, then it would be completely fine. Another thing to look in is if some sort of transition the company is undergoing. So whether that's a turnaround play uh, or it's a transition in their business models or something along those lines. And speaking of business models, hated companies are misunderstood business models. That was the case with AMD. Um, Not many people liked the stock. It was down quite a bit from the highs, and they were like, AMD, why would you buy that? Just buy Nvidia. Not many people understood what Lisa Su was doing, how she was positioning the company, and that's how you get 400% gains in under 2 years. So if you follow all of these tips, find a select few stocks, you're going to do really well. Another bonus is if the stock has recently crashed and people hate it a lot, that goes hand in hand with the hated or misunderstood. And as for stocks in my portfolio that I think could 10x in the long term, I think the most well set up are going to be Celsius and SoFi for this. I think both of them are really well positioned for the long term. So over the long term, they could definitely 10x. If you look at AMD, I don't think it has a 10x. I think it has a 2 to 3x remaining potential. ELF, I think it could 3 to 5x over the long run, but not 10x, I don't think. Nebius, um, I think it's a 2 to 3x potentially. Netflix is more of a safer stock. That's like a 2x over the long term. ServiceNow, same with that. And Rubrik, it's very hard for Rubrik. It's a smaller company. I think it could 2 to 3x over the long term. But basically, SoFi, Celsius, those real big opportunities for high growth. Um, lastly, some stocks that I'd be interested in buying now or eventually. We have Meta. I'm not interested in buying it now. I made a whole video about why I'm not, but I do think in the future, in the next year or so, I think the stock will go down, and when it does, I will be very interested in making it a core position in the portfolio at the right price. Celsius and SoFi, just like I discussed before. Then we have Amazon, pretty much same thing with Meta. I'd need it to drop for me to want to enter into the company, but if it does, like I think it will, I'll make it probably a core position in the portfolio. And then Palo Alto Networks and Rocket Lab. These are two higher growth names that I really, really like. I just can't justify really buying in at current valuations. So I'd be waiting to get in if there's a pullback in the stock specifically or the overall market. Because if there's a market correction or crash even down 15-20%, these stocks are going to be down over 50%, which would be very nice entry points for these two specifically. So these two are really on my watch list. If they go down a ton, these two I think are going down, and these two are buys right now. So other than that, thank you guys so much for tuning in. If you guys have any questions, leave them down in the comment section down below. And if you guys want me to research a stock of your choosing, let me know in the comments as well, and I'll feature you guys in the next video. All right, thank you guys so much for watching. Have a great day.